The year was 1968, and Glasgow's nightlife was thriving. Among the many popular venues stood the Barrowland Ballroom, a lively dance hall where couples met, friendships blossomed, and for some, love was found under the dazzling lights. But in the shadows of the music and laughter lurked a monster, one whose name would become synonymous with terror. He was called Bible John, and he was unlike any killer the city had ever seen. It started with Patricia Docker, a 25-year-old nurse who decided to spend a night out at the Barrowland Ballroom. She never returned home. The following morning, her lifeless body was discovered in a deserted lane near her residence. She had been strangled, her handbag missing, and her body left exposed as if the killer wanted her to be found. The police were baffled. There were no witnesses, no clear suspects, and no immediate leads. What made this case particularly unsettling was the brutality and precision of the murder. Patricia's killer had not acted in a frenzy. He had planned this. Glasgow police launched an extensive investigation, but with little evidence to go on, the case went cold. Then, nearly 18 months later, the nightmare returned. On August 15, 1969, Jemima McDonald, a 32-year-old mother of three, also decided to visit the Barrowland Ballroom. She had spent the evening dancing, drinking, and enjoying herself. Witnesses reported seeing her leave with a tall, well-dressed man, someone who carried himself with confidence. The next day, her sister grew concerned when Jemima didn't return home. Hours later, her worst fears were realized. Jemima's body was found in an abandoned tenement. The cause of death? Strangulation? Her clothes had been partially removed, and once again, her handbag was missing. This wasn't a coincidence. The similarities between Patricia and Jemima's murders were undeniable. Both women had visited the same dance hall, left with a mysterious man, and met a tragic end. Panic spread throughout Glasgow. Women grew fearful of going out alone. Parents warned their daughters to stay away from the Barrowland Ballroom, but the killer wasn't finished yet. On October 31, 1969, a 29-year-old woman named Helen Puddock decided to go out for the evening. Accompanied by her sister Jean, she headed to the Barrowland Ballroom, where they met two men named John. One of them, Helen's dancing partner for the night, spoke of biblical verses and condemned sinfulness. He carried himself with an air of superiority, yet his charm was undeniable. Helen and John shared a taxi with the two men, heading toward their homes. When John exited the cab, Helen was left alone with her date. That was the last time she was seen alive. Her body was found the next morning near her home, strangled with her own stockings. But this time, the killer had made a mistake. Jean had gotten a clear look at him. She provided the police with a detailed description. A tall, slender man with reddish blonde hair, sharp features, and an overlapping front tooth. He spoke with a polite, educated accent and seemed almost obsessive about cleanliness, wiping down the taxi door handle before exiting. With this crucial information, authorities crafted a composite sketch. It was widely circulated throughout Glasgow, and police ramped up their efforts to track the mysterious man down. But despite their best efforts, Bible John remained a ghost, slipping through their fingers every time they thought they had a lead. Then one night, something happened that changed the course of the investigation forever. The Glasgow police force launched what was, at the time, one of the largest manhunts the city had ever seen. Officers flooded the streets, patrolling the Barrowland Ballroom in plainclothes, hoping to catch a glimpse of someone matching the composite sketch. They interrogated over 50,000 potential witnesses, following every possible lead. And yet, Bible John seemed to vanish into thin air. The portrait of the suspected killer, drawn with the help of a witness, generated thousands of tips. Some men who bore an unfortunate resemblance to the drawing found themselves questioned multiple times, some even carrying police-issued cards stating that they had been cleared of suspicion. But the pressure to solve the case was mounting. Adding to the growing hysteria, a bizarre twist in the investigation made headlines. One witness, while being questioned, mentioned that a dog walking nearby had the same hair color as Bible John's. In a move that seemed more comical than calculated, police officers chased the startled dog through the streets, cornered it, and clipped a sample of its hair for comparison. Despite their exhaustive efforts, the case remained unsolved. Then a break in the case seemed to appear. A man named John M., a known suspect, bore a striking resemblance to the police sketch. He was questioned multiple times, but nothing conclusive ever emerged. Then in 1980, he took his own life, leaving behind more questions than answers. As forensic technology advanced, authorities decided to revisit the case. In 1996, with the approval of the courts, John M.'s body was exhumed for DNA testing. Many were convinced that this would finally prove whether or not he was Bible John. The media frenzy was intense. Headlines speculated that the infamous killer's identity would finally be confirmed. But months later, the results came back. The DNA did not match the evidence found on Helen Puttock's clothing. John M. was not Bible John. It was a devastating blow to the investigation. If not John M., then who? Was Bible John still alive, living a normal life, perhaps even walking among the very people who had feared him for decades? Then, in 2004, something happened that reignited the case. In December 2004, a shocking development emerged. DNA from a recent crime scene in Glasgow was found to be an 80% match to the DNA from Helen Puttock's clothing. This revelation sent shockwaves through the investigation. The implications were staggering. Bible John's bloodline was still in Glasgow. The police immediately shifted their focus to the relatives of the person whose DNA had been tested, launching a quiet but intensive search for answers. Unlike previous investigations, this time the police refrained from revealing too much information to the press. They had learned from past mistakes. The media circus surrounding John M. had done more harm than good. Instead, they methodically began collecting DNA samples from the family members of the 2004 suspect, hoping that science would finally close the case that had haunted Glasgow for decades. As of today, Bible John remains unidentified. His crimes, forever etched into Scotland's criminal history, continue to cast a long shadow. Some believe he is still alive, an elderly man hiding in plain sight, carrying the weight of his sins. Others speculate that he may have died long ago, his identity buried with him. What is certain, however, is that the legend of Bible John, the dance hall killer, will never be forgotten. And somewhere, someone may still hold the key to unlocking one of Glasgow's greatest mysteries. Will the truth ever come to light? Or will Bible John remain a ghost, haunting the annals of history forever?